Hello, welcome to Veterans Voice. We have a Vietnam veteran here with us today. His name is Mike Flowers, and he's going to tell us a little bit about where he served and what time he was over there and everything. Mike, now you told me earlier that you served with the Army Special Army Supply, was it?
Yes, sir. I was with 228 S&S, which
228.
stands, I believe, for Supply and Service.
Supply and Service?
Yes.
Now, what was your specialty over there? Although
I was a fuel
you
specialist.
were a fuel specialist.
Yeah, I was trained to be a clerk before I landed there, and then I was kind of thrust into the job of a fuel specialist.
When you got off the plane, they said you this way.
You got it, and that's exactly the way it went
the way
too.
they did me.
Exactly right.
So you ended up driving some fuel trucks, is that right?
For a while, yeah, I sure did.
Yeah.
Hauled 5,000 to 10,000 gallons of fuel at one time, making runs, convoys back and forth to Saigon. Also, later on, after I was restationed to a different area, I ran about 1,200 gallons around, just topping off tanks of different spots where they needed fuel and everything.
So you were a pretty good target, but you were a moving target.
Yes, sir.
And if they could have blown up a fuel truck, they would have
Quite a bit of damage.
quite a bit, and actually could do more damage.
Yes, sir.
With other stuff around those.
Yes, sir.
Now, how many trucks did you have in the convoy at a time?
Well, in the convoys we ran, you could have anywhere, all depending on how much fuel we needed for resupply and everything. It could be anywhere from 3, 4, 5 to 10 to 15 at a time or something like that.
So did you haul diesel or gasoline or any airplane?
All of the above.
All the above.
Yeah, there was MoGas, diesel, JP4, which was mostly for the helicopters and stuff, and avgas. And they used that for a lot of the small airplanes they use over there and everything, like Puff the Magic.
So what was
Grave.
MoGas?
That's what we used in Jeeps. It was like your basic regular gas that you use today in your cars and everything like that.
Oh, so like mower gas. Huh?
Yeah, I guess so.
So the cheaper gas, I guess, for the Jeeps, and of course which one of them was more explosive?
I would say the JP4, which is like a jet fuel for the helicopters, and the avgas, which was a fuel for the smaller planes and stuff like that too. That was the most explosive.
Yeah, the gasoline in itself is pretty explosive.
It's a strange thing too, because a lot of people said the gas itself is explosive, but really it's more the fumes than it is
More the fumes.
than it is the liquid and everything.
Yeah, I found out the hard way one time when I threw it on a bonfire. Now, your rank was an E4, and you were based at Tay Ninh.
Tay Ninh, yes, sir.
And that was a base, but there was actually a town off of that base named
Yes, sir.
Tay Ninh, which
Yes,
is
sir.
real close to Saigon. Is that correct?
Well, we were probably about an hour west of Saigon, kind of south
hour
and west, because we were right off the Cambodian border.
Yeah, you're real close to Cambodia. weren't
Yes, yes.
you? In fact, they run some assaults combined with the South Vietnamese army over into Cambodia, didn't they?
Yes, sir.
And that was off of the Ho Chi Minh Trail, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
And they found a bunch of supplies and stuff that the North Vietnamese had stacked up there. And did they have them in tunnels, or did they,
You know what? I never did get into that end of it. We stayed right at the base camp, but they left early in the morning, empty, and maybe with troops and stuff like that. But then they would be coming back with all kinds of goodies, and it was all over the airfield and
And
everything.
then they just stacked them everywhere all over your base. huh?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I heard they come back with a bunch of rice. That was their main fuel that they ate.
Hey, imagine that.
Now, on the internet, I found something interesting about the rice bugs, but you told me earlier you
I
you
never had
heard
a
that
problem.
expression.
No.
They were also called pill bugs and kind of a wood louse. In other words, they were like cockroaches, I guess, and they were everywhere. You told me earlier they were.
We
they
had
were practically
cockroaches everywhere, and that's
Yeah.
something I got. To tell you the truth, it took me years to get that phobia out of me and everything.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
one night I woke up, and I mean there was thousands of them coming through our hooches.
Now,
and
with
everything.
cockroaches, I was pretty much at home. I was raised on the farm, and we
Right
had
home then.
cockroaches. Just shove them aside and go ahead and eat.
Well, you watch a bunch of guys at 2 and 3 in the morning. They had flip flops because we always use those running back and forth
Oh,
to
yeah,
showers
yeah.
or anything, and that was our weapon of choice that night, beating on the
Oh
cockroaches
yeah,
and
beating on the
everything.
cockroaches.
Yep.
Well, I thought I'd seen some big ones over there, but when I went to Florida one year camp meeting, a church camp meeting, I saw some of them big enough as your shoe almost, and you didn't know what you were stepping on. So I guess I remember a bunch of rats being over there on our base there, close to Da Nang and Phu Bai. You had a lot of rats there too.
A lot of rats, a lot of snakes. Believe it or not, we ended up with a bunch of monkeys in there.
Bunch of monkeys.
All kinds of dogs. I mean, everywhere you looked, there was dogs and everything. So there was always some kind of animals around.
Always something.
Yes.
And you had plenty of food around.
Oh, yes.
For them to get into.
Yes.
So now, at night, how was your evenings? Did you have very many mortars or rockets come in on you?
Mostly in evening time, we would get rockets as a form of harassment. Nothing that was accurate, and we used to joke because we were right in the foothills of the Black Virgin Mountain. We used to joke that they didn't even have to shoot them; they would just throw them kind of over the side or something like
really?
that, you know.
Yeah.
But it was just harassment, and that was a pretty regular harassment and everything. We could sit there on top of our hooches at nighttime and watch that mountain, and during the whole time I was there, I guess there was Special Forces, Green Beret, different bunches that had mounted on the top and tried to put a defense, trying to obtain control of that mountain. And never once were they able to do it the whole time I was there and everything.
Really?
So you could sit there and watch helicopters buzzing around the top of it and everything, see steady streams of red being pumped into it, but nothing ever got it. Next night was the same old movie over and over again.
Same old movie, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Every fifth round was a tracer round, and you could see them.
Yes, sir.
Just like a straight line.
Yes, sir.
Did you ever see the Puff the Magic Dragon?
Never did.
Dragon
I heard all the stories all the time I was over there.
Yeah, I saw it in operation one night in Da Nang.
And that's with the miniguns and everything, too.
Yeah, around the Marble Mountain. They just flew around that mountain, you know, and just a steady stream. And
there
Puff
was
the Magic
supposed to be a lot
Dragon.
of firepower on that thing, too.
For years, I thought it was out of a helicopter until I found out later, much later, it was actually like a C-130 or something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that. But they just had a great big gun mounted in there, and it operated automatic. They didn't have a guy operating it.
Right.
The pilot operated that gun.
Yeah, it was a minigun, too, from what I understand. Wasn't that what it was?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Yep.
Now, on January 1st, 1970, were you in country by then?
That's when I ended up going over there, right after I
1970.
turned 19 December 29th of the previous year, and January I was sitting over in Vietnam.
Happy birthday.
Yes, amen.
I turned 21 when I was in Vietnam, walking guard duty in the rain at Phu Bai. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you.
Now, January 1st, 1970, I found some figures that there was 425,000 GIs in country.
Okay.
But then Nixon started reducing the troops, and by April 30th of the same year, the troop strength was down to 385,000 already.
Yeah.
And I think by the time you left the country, you said that the troops, many of them on your base, had already left.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
We, 13 of us got left there as advisors, and we were supposed to show the ARVNs, the South Vietnamese Army, how to run all our different, we were supposedly experts in that field, in that area, so I had to show them how to work all the valves and the tanks and the gates and how to gauge fuel and stuff like that. So we stayed there for about 2 weeks with just a small detachment of a helicopter unit, just in case we needed to get out in a hurry.
I see.
And that's when, like I said, we started
So
getting
they were in
more.
the process of closing down that camp.
They were, and it turned it over to the South Vietnamese Army.
So I think we left country, actually left everything. Was it 73, was it?
That sounds
I remember
about
the
right.
date right.
That sounds about
To
right.
get everybody out of there.
Yep.
But Saigon was one of the last places that they were retreating from, wasn't it?
Yes.
'Cause
Yes.
it started in the north.
And people to this day have seen those pictures of everybody
Oh, yeah.
coming off the roofs and everything like
Yeah.
that. Oh, yeah.
So that was already beginning at that time. Then.
Yes, sir.
Now the U.S. and the South Vietnamese Army troops, I think it was called the ARVN, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
Remember that, right?
Yes, sir.
And they brought back from Cambodia tons of supplies. They brought them back to your camp there at Tay Ninh, is that
Yes,
right?
sir. Yes, sir.
Which is typical, because they just didn't have the warehouse space or any place to
Exactly.
store that stuff.
Exactly.
But people can do a Google search of that particular outfit to the 228th
SNS.
Supply Supply and Service Company in South Vietnam.
Yes, sir.
1970. They need to put the date in there, 1970.
Yes, sir.
Because they might pull some other. They're still, I guess, in operation, that particular company, aren't they? In the Army?
And you know what? Now that I don't know. I'll be real honest with
I think they are, but I'm not sure.
you. Okay.
But it has quite a history, and also in all those supplies, not only was there a bunch of rice, but a bunch of AK-47s that they
Yes, sir.
captured from the North Vietnamese Army.
Yes, sir.
And they stored them in Cambodia because they thought they were safe. You know, that they didn't think our troops would cross the border, but they were ordered to go over there and capture their supply. That's mainly what they were after, so they could weaken their army. Now, it worked for a little while, I guess, but they just kept coming, you know.
Yes, sir.
So, Tay Ninh was your base. You're a what they call Spec 4.
Spec 4. Yep.
And in country January through December of 1970.
Yes.
Now, I don't know if you want me to get personal with you or not, but did you get a chance to take an R&R while you were in country?
I did.
Okay.
Matter of fact, from my understanding, you were allowed one R&R, one 7-day R&R, and one 7-day leave. You had two where you could actually spend 14 days out of the country and everything. And they gave us a list of different places that you could go to and everything. And I actually went to Australia for 7 days.
Australia?
Yes, sir.
I heard that was a great place.
It was a wonderful place. And I'll tell you what, the whole time I was over there, I was laughing because English accent over
Oh,
there.
yeah. Yeah.
And I'm just getting used to a Vietnamese accent.
Yeah.
And to kind of all at once coin that kind of an accent, it was
Yeah.
very strange. So every time somebody spoke, you'd find yourself chuckling.
Yeah, they call you chap and all that.
Well, you name it. I mean, it's just a whole different breed of speaking and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. There was a lot of a lot of Australian troops
Yes.
in Vietnam.
Yes, there
I
was.
remember seeing some of them.
Yes, sir.
And let's see, some of the other countries that were involved. There was a few other countries. Korea didn't they have Koreans? South Koreans have some there?
have. I did know about the Australians because we had actually bumped into them a couple times in their movements around through there and everything. The others I had just heard rumors of, so I couldn't really tell you, to be real honest with you.
Of course, you couldn't hardly tell the South Vietnamese army from the North Vietnamese army.
No, no. Nobody wore the white hats and black hats or anything of that nature.
There wasn't any standard uniform for them.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of guys have taken an opportunity to go back to the country of Vietnam, and they tell me how different it is today. And have you had a chance to go back?
Never have. I had thought about it a few times because really and truly, the times I was there, especially when I was driving on the trucks and everything, it was really a beautiful country. Besides being ravaged by war and everything, you could see a lot of the old temples and things of that nature and everything. And it was just, number one, it was different from anything we'd ever used to seen before and everything, you know. And so it was just a beautiful country, a lot of rice paddies and stuff like that. Watching the people work out in the rice paddies and stuff like that. I mean, and the water buffaloes all over the place. That was part of their, like we would use a car or something like, or a tractor or something like that.
Yeah.
That was exactly what they were using, the water buffaloes.
In fact, I think they were considered a little wealthy if they had a water buffalo.
You're absolutely right.
But it was, they did a lot of work for them, I guess, you know.
Yes.
Now, I'd heard from some of the other fellows that there were tigers, you know, in the country of South
I'd heard
Vietnam.
the same thing. Never had seen them, though.
I'd never seen them.
And glad.
But but glad. Monkeys, I know I've seen them.
Tons of those.
In fact, we were stationed on Marble Mountain there, Da Nang. Marble Mountain was a base right on the beach,
Okay.
close to China Beach. And between, you had Monkey Mountain over here, you had the Marble Mountain over here, which was actually a big marble rock. And I mean, it was several hundred feet high. But this is where the North Vietnamese would tunnel what we called the gooks, you know, expression, you know, we use for them. But Charlie, you know, my kids still kid me about Dad, you're home. Charlie's not here. So, and I got a brother named Charlie, but they in that particular mountain called Marble Mountain, they had dug tunnels underneath there and everything, and they would come out of the tunnels at night and lob rockets and stuff at us.
So you guys had the same thing we did.
Yeah,
because that's all it was tunnels throughout it.
And they were harassing quite a bit, but one night the wind was heavy, and they decided to do. They were after the helicopters. Well, they hit very few helicopters. They went all the way over into the living quarters. In fact, some of them went in on the beach in the ocean. That's how bad the wind was that night. So, did you see the relics of a 140 millimeter Russian rocket after it exploded?
No.
Yeah, we picked up some pieces there that night, and some of them chunks. I mean, you hit a man and cut him in half, But that was right in the middle of the night. Of course, they never do anything like that much in the daytime.
Right.
They do it at night. We thought we were pretty safe. This was August 22nd, 1967. Okay. And up to that time, we hadn't got hit very hard, just kind of on the perimeters. But that night, they got them right on top of us. And we lucked out that night, actually, because there was a reconnaissance plane coming in for a landing. And we had an airstrip, and also Da Nang had an airstrip 7 miles away. Well, they could see everything. When they come in for a landing, they could see everything. And they saw those flashes going off. And so they radioed artillery, and artillery actually hit them with the first shot.
No kidding.
And the next day they went out there and they found like 80-some rounds stacked up. They didn't even have time to take them back into the caves. But they'd already shot off 80-some rounds, and they pretty well tore us up that night. But that was the kind of stuff you had to deal with. A lot of times you just couldn't take your gun and go out and shoot at them. They weren't there.
Okay. Yep.
They'd duck back in their hole or something. And sometimes they actually enter with the South Vietnamese Army, and they kind of mixed with them, and they were what you'd call double agents.
Yes.
They were also on the north.
Yes.
And so it was hard to tell. But
we had something very similar to that ourselves with the whole time I was probably at Tainan, I think we only had 2 or 3 actual firefights where you had somebody who was trying to get into the wires.
Yeah.
And during our days, we would allow people from the town to come in, and they would do different jobs throughout the base camp and everything. And they would always have people around them and everything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they weren't just walking around free or anything. But we'd have a boy-san working in maybe the kitchen area, and mama-san maybe cleaning out the hooches and stuff like that. One night we had a firefight of incoming people coming in the wire. The next morning we had our body count and everything. And sure enough, there was the boy-san who'd been working in the kitchen area and everything. So they would always, and that kind of slammed home a message to me that, you didn't want to be too trusting.
No.
And you really couldn't tell who was who. So it was a hard way to determine who was the enemy. So you got to the point where everybody was the enemy. And you kind of stayed standoffish like that too,
And you zipped your lips as for what you told them.
Yes. You can laugh and joke and carry on and everything, but that's as far as it went. You really didn't make any kind of a connection of a friendship and just a casual hi, how you doing? And that's about it. And left it at that.
It was amazing how many of them actually worked on bases.
Yes.
And it was actually our government was the ones that actually helped them to get on base and get jobs, and interviewed and all that stuff.
They would clear them and everything.
Yeah.
And I used to always think they were trying to promote the United States way of earning money, using money as a token instead of just chickens or this or that. It was establishing our brand of I guess government or something like that in the country, And that worked that whole time I was there until we left that base camp. And when I moved to the next base camp, I seen they still had it going on there. So that was over country in all of our bases and everything that was going on.
Yeah. I think some of them resented the fact that we were there because we were in their country, we invaded their country.
Yes, sir.
That's the way they looked at it.
Yes, sir.
Although the government, invited us in,
Yes,
to help
sir.
them to fight the North Vietnamese.
Yep.
Now, when I was sent over there, I was told I was fighting communists, the spread of communism.
Yeah.
That's what we were told.
Yep.
Do you feel like, and I know my opinion may be different from yours, but do you feel like that it was somewhat political war?
A lot. The more, you know what? I guess I did. Not at the time, I would say no, because it was more my patriotic duty
Sure.
or something like that
Yeah.
to do. But through the years, after getting out and everything and learning more and more about it, you almost feel like it was nothing but politics and a sorts.
Yeah.
And that was the part I think that left a lot of chips on a lot of the
Sure.
the veterans' shoulders and everything
Yeah.
over that. We were just being used, and that's a bunch of hearsay, I know, in some respects to that. But
Yeah.
that's the way a lot of people walked around with that attitude for years and
Yeah.
years and years, really and truly.
Yeah, I think so. It had an effect on your morale and everything.
Yes, sir.
After you got home, because then you heard the opinion of the people at home, what they really thought of you.
A lot of rioting going on
Which
back home then.
wasn't good,
Yeah.
So
I know when we landed in San Francisco, coming back home to go, and we were given 30 days to go back home, and then I was still had time left, so I was being shipped over to Germany, and they were debriefing, and you were changing out gear and this and that, and one of the last things that was told to me that stuck in my head was not to wear your dress greens home. They asked us to go home in civilian clothing, and of course I'm going to go, well, why?
yeah,
Well, you're not going to be very warmly welcomed and
Yeah.
everything. And I probably had an attitude about them. Well, I don't care because there was so much unrest going on and everything. And,
Yeah.
and I figured I was in the midst of it, and they had no right to, because they didn't understand the half of it or anything.
right.
And so I thought, well, I'm going to wear mine home. I don't care. Well, that's
Yeah.
up to you, but don't be surprised if you don't get a warm welcome.
Yeah. So the time you got home, it was almost close to 71 then.
Yeah, right, December, right there at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I come home in 68, right at the end of, or beginning of 68. So,
There was a lot of controversy going on.
and we wore our uniforms in the airport, there at San Francisco, but we didn't get a very warm welcome. In fact,
No.
people would pull their kids away from you if they had to go on the other side of the airport just to get away from you.
Yeah.
We couldn't even get served in the
You get
in the
called a few
restaurant.
names and everything too.
Yeah.
A couple of the instances we are well aware of, that they called us baby killers and everything else
yeah.
like that. So whether you were involved in
Get
it or
spit
not,
in your
you were
face?
part of that.
Anybody spit in your face?
No, I wasn't going to let them get that close.
They were pretty close to that. Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, I think there was a lot of misunderstanding, and
Yes, sir.
just about like any war, there's a lot of misunderstanding of why we're there. And, it makes me proud of our troops today that are in Afghanistan and those that went to Iraq.
Me too.
Because, they were there to do a job. And, I think there was more of an understanding by the people at home, and they give them more support.
May have
And
been something they had to learn from us, to be honest
they
with you.
had, maybe we were good lesson teachers there.
Yeah.
And not to let that happen again. What is the motto that we have as Vietnam veterans?
No one
Never-
left behind.
No one ever left behind.
Yeah.
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 So we did leave some people behind over there, didn't we?
Yeah.
There's
Not by our choice.
even
so,
today,
okay.
there's
Yeah.
well over 150, 200 still missing in action.
Yeah.
They're not accounted for. And
A
then,
lot of families still not receiving closure after all these
Yeah,
years and
yeah.
everything, and that's a sad
They are
thing.
getting some cooperation from the North Vietnamese,
Right.
And they're actually helping to find some of those that are buried. over there.
Attitudes and ideas and opinions have changed a lot since those days and everything. Matter
Mm-hmm.
of fact, that's supposed to be the hot spot to take vacations anymore now, because I keep
Yeah,
seeing that over and over and over.
Yeah, well, there's some beautiful beaches there.
Oh yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And I imagine a lot of the towns and cities are looking a lot better shape than when we was over there. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's good, I guess. That country is in war with the French. The French were there before us.
yes, sir.
And they've been in war for years. Before we got there.
Got a history of it.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but I think we hopefully left them in better shape. But there's a lot of mistakes made in war.
Yeah, always will be. That's
Yeah, there
part
always
of
will
what
be. That's-
war bears with it.
War
really
bears
and
with it,
truly.
yeah.
Yeah.
But we made it home.
Yes.
So, here a few years ago, they had this slogan going around, "Welcome home," to Vietnam veterans, and that helped.
Yep.
And it does help when you go somewhere and they say thank you for your service. I think that's good. That's great, and I even thank other veterans for their service.
I do too. And believe it or not, I've gotten to the point now with all the unrest that's been going on with our police and stuff like that. I've even been known to say thank you to the officers for the work they're doing and everything.
Yeah, and a lot of them.
That's one of those underappreciated things too. At the same time,
that's true. Yeah. I especially appreciate some store giving me 10% off. A veteran discount like Lowe's.
And you're seeing a lot more of that nowadays too.
Yeah,
I've been really surprised.
A lot of them do that. Yeah, so that's great. And we're going to round this up here in about a minute. Is there anything else that you'd like to add that you can think of that we didn't cover?
No, not that I can think of off the top of my head. I've always been kind of wanting and wondering where a lot of the guys that I had served with, whatever had become of them and everything.
Yeah.
So I'm always watching our newspaper that we get, always to see if there's any reunions or anything. I've never run across a reunion yet of any of them. So I would hope someday they would, just for old time's sake and everything.
Now, I went to San Francisco back in 2005. Took my son. We went over. He was writing songs, and he went to a songwriters convention over there. And where he went was close to Sacramento, which is close to where the buddy that I went through Vietnam with, went all the way through the Marines with. And so I got to meet him, see him. He always warned me about it. See, someday you're probably going to put that weight back on, Because over there, we only weighed 163 pounds. Well, that was
lean and mean
51 years ago and 100 pounds ago. So, but I guess that's what marriage will do. Good marriage will do for you, and good cook, So, anyway, that's my excuse.
There you go.
We're going to round this up, and we want to thank you for coming on the show today, Mike Flowers, and we're just proud of our veterans today, proud of everyone that served, and proud of those that, even at home, they're supporting those that are overseas situations. So
it's taken all that to keep us in the position we have in this world nowadays. Okay.
Exactly. So we're going to wrap it up here, and we want to thank you for watching today, and we'll be back next time.